Outside the presence of the jury, are there any matters that we need to take up before we bring the jurors?
Your Honor, it was brought to our attention that there were some folks outside the courtroom talking loud about the case, specifically in a manner in which other bystanders could hear what was going on. And I know Your Honor made an instruction right before we walked out of the courtroom, so I would ask that the severity of the consequences be reiterated to people in the gallery.
All right. I'm going to say that there's a zero tolerance rule in place for violation of the rules that I've recited, and that means that if the bailiff observes anyone talking in a way that could be overheard by a juror and that conversation is about the case, I'm authorizing the bailiffs to remove that person from the courthouse. It also would have the implication of banning that person from the remainder of this trial. So I would urge you, and there are more serious consequences that could be put into place, such as contempt of court or also potential jury tampering. So this is a very serious matter, and I would just urge you to follow these rules to the letter. If you wish to talk about the case, do so in a way that's a private conversation outside of being overheard by any juror in this case. All right. Anything else that we need to take up?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly, I believe that the next witness, if I'm wrong, I apologize, maybe Marty Marino. If that's so, there is a exhibit that they may intend to introduce, which is of a heart that I believe that Hannah made, and we have some concerns about that particular exhibit, and just say that our grounds would be objections, would be on relevancy, and 403 grounds about that. So if we do object, that would be the reasons why. And I don't know if we're going to address that now or wait until it's attempted to be, if the state is intending to offer it.
Yes. I mean, we are judging if you want to talk about it now, but.
You're welcome to state the basis for the exhibit if you wish.
Your Honor, Ms. Marino, who was the EMS worker who was primarily responsible for essentially shielding Hannah from what was going on, indicated that Hannah had drawn her a heart, which I've provided some time ago to the defense, with her name and her mother's name, and it's one of the busy things they were doing while they were in the ambulance waiting for her grandparents and stuff to get here before she went down. She asked that Ms. Marino keep it with her always. And so I think it's relevant to Hannah's state of mind and what was going on during this relevant time frame.
All right.
And I'll be glad to show it to you, Judge, if I can approach. It's marked the State Exhibit 8.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I'll reserve ruling on it, but if and when the objection's made, I'll make a ruling on it. I'm inclined to allow it, but I understand the basis of the.
To reiterate, it would be based on Rule, North Carolina Rule 4142 and 403, and I'll just say objection for reasons previously stated.
Right, and I do find that it's relevant, and the probative value is not outweighed by any potential for prejudice of the exhibit. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and bring jurors in, please. for the state.
State calls Marty Marino.
Please stand, please. Put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony to this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please be seated.
Ms. Shikita.
Please state your name, ma'am.
Martha Ann Marino.
And do you go by another name?
I go by Marty.
Okay. Miss Marino, where were you working back in May of 2013?
Wake County EMS.
And can you tell us what some of your duties and responsibilities were with Wake County EMS?
Everything from patient care, responding to 911 calls, anything that, essentially anyone needs help with, we took care of.
And how long had you been working in some capacity as an EMS worker?
About 8 years.
Did you have training to enable you to do that type of job?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you just sort of briefly outline the training that you went through prior to becoming an EMS worker?
Went to school over at Wake Tech, but furthermore, we do continuing education monthly to deal with new situations, anything that kind of arises, patient care, new protocols, procedures.
And are you currently working with Wake County EMS?
No, ma'am.
How long have you been away from that position?
Since 2014.
And what are you doing now?
I work in clinical research.
I want to take your attention back to May of 2013. At that point, or prior to May 14th, 2013, had you had occasion with EMS to arrive on scene to find a deceased person?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you even estimate how many times in your 8 years or so?
Countless.
Okay. And what do you recall about the call on May 14th in the morning hours at the Allister apartment?
I remember responding to an apartment and finding a deceased woman and a child.
And when you are called to go to a particular occasion, when someone, for example, calls 911, do you get some background information about, for example, what you might encounter?
Usually the dispatcher, the 911 dispatcher, will give us whatever information that has been relayed to them via the caller. And we usually, if the fire department arrives on scene before us, they'll either give dispatch an update or, let us know over one of our TAC channels or our radio communication of what's going on.
Earlier this morning, I know you weren't present in the courtroom, but the jurors were able to hear the initial 911 call that was placed where Mr. Pittman was indicated that he believed that Melissa was dead. Was that related to you before you all got there?
To the best of my ability to remember, we pulled up right as it came over our computer system.
And when you arrived, do you come in an ambulance? I know that's
Yeah.
a stupid question. Okay. Who was there at the Allister when your ambulance arrived?
There was a fire engine, and then there was a couple construction workers that were there on scene, and then after other people arrived.
When you were working that morning, do you work in conjunction, like with a partner or with another person?
Yes, I do. I work with a partner.
And who was your partner at that time?
Betsy.
When you came in the ambulance and saw the fire truck, what, if anything, did you do?
Standard, we get out our equipment and then we walk up to where our patient is or where we're being called to and assess the scene and then go from there.
And you had said that when you got there that the fire department was on scene. Is that standard, that is, that a fire truck would also respond to, say, a 911 call?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe for the jury where your station was or where you were prior to getting that dispatch?
We were at the station, which is only just about a few minutes down the road on Six Forks Road, and the fire department is just about a couple miles up from that, so we were very close.
And so were you a little bit further than the fire department?
Yes, we're a little bit further.
And when you got on scene, can you describe, once you got your equipment, what happened next?
Once I got my equipment, we got out of the truck and we walked upstairs into the apartment, and that's where we saw I believe there was 2 construction workers on scene and the engine company that was in the apartment.
And can you, to the best of your recollection, what was and when you say engine company, do you mean the fire department?
The fire department, yes.
What were they doing when you got there to the door and into the apartment?
I believe one of the fire department personnel was looking at medication, which is not uncommon for something that we do. We collect medication, identification, and another one just told us that we had what they called a code 7, which is a deceased person.
And once you got that information, what did you do?
Well, as soon as we confirmed that it was a code 7, I saw that there was a girl standing with a older gentleman in the living room, kind of towards a window or sliding glass door. And I asked her to come with me. I picked her up and went right back to my ambulance.
Prior to doing that, you said you confirmed that it was a code 7. What do you mean by that? What did you do?
Well, we walked in and obvious injuries that are incompatible with life. I mean, that was very obvious. We didn't touch anything. My partner walked in. She had the monitor on, and I was right behind her. And when we realized what we had, we just kind of backed out. Both of us did.
And why do you do that? That is, once you realized that she was deceased, why do you back out at that point?
Several reasons. Scene contamination. We don't want to contaminate anything. Clearly, it's not a natural cause of death. And there was kind of a disheveled look in the room. And, we kind of trained not to touch anything, kind of back out. And that's what we did.
You're my first witness?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what I'm marking as State's Exhibit 6 and ask if you recognize that photograph.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is State's Exhibit 6?
That would be Melissa.
And you said that once you sort of saw the situation, and I think you used the words that her injuries were incompatible with life, did you touch or disturb her or anything on the bed?
No, ma'am.
And when you saw the disarray, I think was the word in the room, were you careful not to change or contaminate that in any way?
Yes, ma'am.
And State's Exhibit number, I think it's 6, does that fairly and accurately represent the way you saw Melissa when you came in to check to confirm whether or not she was deceased?
Yes, ma'am.
And would it help to illustrate how you found her to the jury that day? It's kind of a weird legal word. But yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Here at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 6.
Any objection?
Objection to grounds previously stated.
All right, it's allowed. Objections overruled.
And you said that after you had confirmed that Melissa was deceased, you made the decision to sort of take the girl. Where did you take Hannah?
I took Hannah to my ambulance.
And why did you do that?
Well, for a number of reasons. Little child doesn't need to be in a crime scene, first off. And second off, the less people, the better. So right as I went to go get Hannah, there was 2 supervisors that showed up. We were kind of in the middle of shift change, and both of them showed up. And they asked me what I had, and I had a code 7. And they basically told me to take Hannah and take her right down to the ambulance, and that's what I did.
During the time that you were with her, how would you describe initially her demeanor?
Happy. Super, super, super happy little girl. Didn't know what happened to her mom. She, I think, just thought her mom was sick and just needed help.
And when she's telling you that and saying that she needed help, did you tell her otherwise?
I told her that people were helping your mom. And I just tried to keep her as busy as I possibly could.
And what kinds of things did you do to make that happen?
I let her eat my lunch. I gave her a lot of candy, stickers, typical things that we kind of carry on our ambulance. I showed her how our heart monitor works, and she made lots of butterflies and hearts and colored, and just a very, happy girl, just, kind of talking about her mom and her relationship. And that's what we just kind of do, just kind of talk her, through everything, have her ask us questions. And if I could answer them, I would try to be as honest as I could.
And when you said you would try to be as honest as you could, what do you mean?
Well, she kept asking about her mom. And I kept telling her, people were with her mom, but she was going to be with us for a little bit, and then she was going to go with some other people.
During the time that you were with Hannah, do you know if she was calling anyone?
I do remember, I believe her dad called several times. She had a cell phone with her. I believe her grandparents also called as well.
And during the time that you were with her, you said you were holding on to her until she was going to go to someone else. Was it your understanding that some family member was on their way to help?
Correct.
And you said that you were in there and she was making butterflies. What was she using to make like butterflies and hearts?
My EKG paper from my monitor.
And during that time, were you just kind of keeping her distracted?
Yeah, keeping her distracted. She was a very talkative child. Talked about her mom, talked about her moving, talked about her dad in Tennessee, that she had a brother. I mean, just basically divulged any information a kid would divulge to a complete stranger. So she's just very open and, she did talk about her mom quite a bit. It's almost as if they had like an inseparable bond, and talked about moving, talking about starting a new school. Her mom had a job at a bank. A lot of information while she was cutting and drawing. So.
And you said that you had a partner, Betsy, that was there. Did she at some point join you, or where was she?
Yes. After I took Hannah down into the ambulance, Betsy joined just a few minutes later. I think she was talking to our supervisors on scene at the time.
And do you have any idea about how long you were actually there with her and keeping her company?
It felt like a lifetime, but maybe an hour or so.
Do you recall what she was wearing during that time frame?
I believe she was in her pajamas. I do recall that it was kind of a little bit chilly out for a May, and I believe I was with Hannah, and they asked to go get shoes and a jacket for her and just bring it to the ambulance, and so they did. That's all I really recall.
Your Honor, first witness.
Yes.
I'm going to first show you State's Exhibit number 7 and ask if you recognize the person in the photograph, State's Exhibit 7.
Yes, the person in the photograph is Hannah.
Okay. And does she, does that fairly and accurately, I know she's at the beach wearing a dress, probably not her pajamas,
Yeah.
but does that generally look the way Hannah did when she was with you on May 14th of 2013?
Very happy, yes.
And would it help to illustrate the way she looked to the jury?
Yes, absolutely. Very happy.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move to introduce State's Exhibit 7 into evidence for
Any-
illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
No, sir.
It's allowed for illustrative purposes.
And I'm going to ask if you recognize State's Exhibit 8. What is State's Exhibit 8?
That's a heart that Hannah made me and asked me to hold on to it, and just to hold on to it, and I did.
And you said she made it. Was that also in the ambulance?
Yeah, it was. It was with us, my partner and I, throughout our entire shift. We just kind of kept it on the dashboard, and then I took it and put it in my car.
And it's on some paper that has red and white on it. What is that?
That is EKG paper. She used a whole roll. But yeah.
And you said that she had asked you to keep it with you. Did
Yeah.
you?
Yes, I did. I kept it. And being in the hot weather that we're in, it had essentially melted to my dashboard. And so I had to take it down. But yes.
And State's Exhibit 8, did she write some words on the heart?
Yes.
And what are those words?
She wrote Hannah, which is her name, and then Melissa for her mom.
And as long as you could keep it without it disintegrating, did you keep it with
Yes, absolutely.
Your Honor, this time the State would move to introduce State's Exhibit 8 into evidence for illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
Objection. The reasons previously stated in the process.
All right. Objection's overruled. It's allowed.
Ms. Marino, you said you think it might have been an hour or so that you were with her. Where did she go, or how did your interaction with Hannah end?
I believe there was a detective or an officer that actually came to get Hannah from me, but she gave me a hug. She said, "Thank you for, the lollipops and the stickers and the candy." And then this is actually when she gave me the heart and told me to keep it and hold on to it.
And so to the best of your knowledge, someone from law enforcement then took custody?
I believe so. There was a lot of people there.
And at the time then that she is leaving from your ambulance and your company, were there other emergency vehicles on scene at that point?
Yes.
Could you describe sort of how big the scene is at that point?
It was a fairly decent sized complex. And from what I recall, it was under construction, so there were lots of different types of vehicles there. But for the emergency side, I mean, there was plenty. There's a lot.
And you said that a law enforcement officer took her, so were there some Raleigh police units at least on scene at that time?
Yes, a lot of them had unmarked vehicles, and most of them wear suits. So I'm assuming it was Raleigh.
And at any point when you were with Hannah, did you at any point indicate to her that her mother had passed away?
No.
And you said that she appeared to have a close relationship with her mother. Was she, during the whole time, kind of asking you about her mother, or did that seem to taper off towards the end?
That just spilled out from the time she walked into my ambulance. She told me about her mom, her new job, moving, Tennessee, a brother. I mean, anything that she could probably remember, she told me. She did tell me that her mom didn't feel good the night before and that they were at a park. So.
And after your interaction with Hannah, did you remain there on scene, or did you all take off?
We cleared up after they got Hannah.
And just to be clear, at no point did either you or your coworker do any sort of intervention or life-saving measures with her at that point. At some point, did someone from the Raleigh Police Department speak to you about your interactions and those types of things, follow up with you?
Yes.
This time I would ask to publish States Exhibits 6, 7, and 8 via the monitor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to first show you States Exhibit 6. You had indicated that this was the way that Miss Melissa looked when you approached there. And viewing that photograph, was there anything that you could do for her at that point?
No, ma'am.
And then the next one, you said that's a photograph of the way Hannah looked?
Yes.
And you even described her face. She seemed happy in that photograph?
Yes.
Okay. And States Exhibit 8. And again, if you could tell us what that was.
That was the heart that Hannah gave me right before she left that had her name and her mom's name that she wrote on my EKG paper.
And then what is it sort of mounted on there when you took that photograph?
The dashboard of my car. I took it.
Thank you. Other than sort of keeping her entertained and keeping her company, did you have to do anything medically, or were you just being a companion?
Just being a companion and listening to her.
Do you recall what time it was that you all went to the Allister area?
In the morning, sometime right around, I believe maybe 7 or 8. It was in the morning, first of shift.
You heard me approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit number 9, which, since you're no longer with EMS, you probably don't even have access to. Do you recognize this stack of papers in States Exhibit 9?
Yes, it's a PCR report.
And looking at States,
PCR report, the EMS trip report.
and looking at it, would it tell you what time that you all were called to that scene?
It should.
There's several pages.
Oh, are there? Okay. Yes. About 7:30 in the morning.
And so looking at States Exhibit 9, does that refresh that it might have been around 7:30?
Yes.
You said it was
About
around
7
6,
and 8. Yeah, it's right around shift change.
And what time does shift change typically?
7. Well, 6:40, 6:50.
And when you went in, other than noticing the condition of sort of the room and Melissa's body, did you notice blood in any other areas?
I did. There was blood on the wall, a couple walls.
And again, it sounds like when you realized that she was deceased, you backed out. Did you stay in the room for any period of time to kind of study?
No.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination.
Did, you never went onto the balcony yourself?
Correct.
And nor did the woman who was walking with you, I believe it was Betsy?
Correct.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Anything further for the state?
No, sir. And
Thank-
should be released, sir.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Any objection to it?
No objection here.
And ma'am, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go. Thank you. Further evidence for the state?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, the state would call Ms. Dawn Wallace to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Good. Thank you, ma'am. Please be seated.
Mr. Waller?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Wallace, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Will you please state your name for us?
Dawn C.V. Wallace.
And Ms. Wallace, how are you related to the victim in this case, Melissa?
I'm her mother.
What's Melissa's date of birth?
5/21/82.
So in May of 2013, she was around 30 years old.
She was.
Can you tell us, you said her mother, is her father in the courtroom today?
He is.
And who's her father?
William Kenneth Huggins.
And is he the gentleman kind of behind me in the green plaid shirt?
He is. With
Okay.
glasses.
And are you and Kenneth still married?
No.
Okay. Who are you married to now, Miss Wallace?
Steve Wallace.
And who's Kenneth married to now?
Barbara Huggins.
Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about when first of all, where she was born and raised?
She was born and raised in Elizabethtown, North Carolina. And she lived there till she graduated from high school.
And then did she get married and move away?
She did. She got married August 5th of 2000, and she and her husband moved to Shelby, North Carolina, where they lived, I think, about two years.
What's her husband's name?
He is, well, he's no longer her husband, Robert Jones.
And you said he goes by Bud.
He goes by Bud.
And when Bud and Melissa were living in Shelby, North Carolina, did they then move away from Shelby?
They did.
Where did they go at that point?
To Cleveland, Tennessee.
And what's the relation between, why did Bud and Melissa go to Tennessee?
He had been working for a textile industry. And he got a job in Cleveland, which is where his family resided, his father and stepmother. And I believe he had a couple of sisters that lived there at the time, and multiple aunts and uncles also.
And we've already heard about Hannah a little bit. Did Bud and Melissa have children?
Yeah, Hannah and Noah. Noah was born in September 2001, and Hannah was born April 7th of 2005.
And did they all live out in Tennessee together?
They did.
And you mentioned that Bud was Melissa's husband. At some point, did they decide to in their marriage.
They did.
When did their marriage end, Miss Wallace?
January 7th of 2013 was when the divorce was final.
After Bud and Melissa decided to divorce and did divorce, did she decide to come back to North Carolina?
She did. She was given the opportunity to open up to be the manager of the first branch here of First Tennessee Bank in the state of North Carolina. And that was to be closer to her family. And she jumped at the opportunity.
What did she do there at First Tennessee Bank?
In Tennessee, she was a VP and she had ran 2 or 3 different branches in Cleveland. And then she was transferring here also to be a branch manager here, I think, at this one.
And when you say here, she was coming here to Raleigh?
To Raleigh.
Okay. And that was going to be the First Tennessee Bank here in Raleigh?
Yes.
Okay. What were her duties going to be there at First Tennessee Bank here?
Well, she would have been the branch manager. She would have been out in the community bringing in clients. I don't know a whole lot, but basically that's.
Did y'all try to get her a little closer to Elizabethtown? Was that an option?
To Wilmington. We live in Wilmington, North Carolina. And she had tried hard to get a job in Wilmington, but most of the positions there only paid about half what she was making, so it just didn't work out. In fact, she had moved to Wilmington a few years prior, hoping to get a job in Wilmington, and she couldn't get one, so they offered her a job at First Tennessee Bank to come back to Cleveland, and so she ended up going back after 3 months.
You said that Bud and Melissa divorced in January of 2013. When did Melissa make the decision to move here to Raleigh?
I believe it was in February or March.
And did she in fact move here to Raleigh?
She did.
When did Melissa move here?
I don't know the exact date, but I know she had not lived here. It was less than 2 weeks.
And do you know where she moved to?
I did. I helped her find the apartment. I came with her and met with her here a few times, and we looked at different places, and we thought that it was a great fit for her. It was close to her schools. That's part of the reason she chose those apartments, because she felt safe there, and it was close to her school. It was close to her job. She could drop the kids off, easily in the mornings to school, and be at work within 10 minutes.
And so she moved into the Allister apartments that we've been talking about?
She did.
And you said that you went with her and helped her pick it out. Did you like the area? Did you feel like it was a good area?
I thought it was great.
Back then, they were still the apartments were still under construction a little bit, weren't
They were. I think there was only like 3 people living in the complex that she was in.
Did you feel like it was a safe place for her?
I did.
And I mentioned the kids. Did both Noah and Hannah come with Melissa when she came in May of 2013?
She wanted both of them to, but Noah started school young, and she didn't feel like, academically he was super smart, but socially, and she wanted him to be able to play sports because he loved sports. And she felt like he would be better off if he was held back a year. So we tried to get him into the Wilmington school to stay with us those last 2 weeks, but they would not allow us to because we were not his guardian. So he had to go back to Tennessee to finish the last 2 weeks of school because she didn't want him to finish here I can't remember what grade he was in at that time, but she didn't want the kids here to know that she was holding him back. So he would finish somewhere else and then just repeat that same grade here.
So when he finished up the school year in May of 2013, was the intent for him to come and join Melissa here?
Definitely.
Okay. And how about Hannah? Did she come with?
She came with her mom. And I went with her to the schools and checked out the schools.
Did Melissa seem to be happy about the move here?
Extremely happy, extremely happy. She was very excited.
And Miss Wallace, tell us a little bit about Melissa and what kind of personality she had.
She was a very vibrant, fun-loving people person. She loved people, and she loved God. She wanted, sorry.
You're fine, take your time.
She wanted everybody to know God, especially her children. The church doors were open. She did everything she could to have her children in church. She loved people. She just always wanted a big crowd around. She was always inviting everybody to her home for every occasion, be it a holiday, just to get together. She just loved people, and it showed in her everyday life through her commitment to her church, her work, her family. She was just a good-hearted soul that treated everybody the same. It didn't matter if you only had $1 or if you were a millionaire. She treated everybody the same with love and respect, and that's what she passed on to her children too.
This may sound like a silly question based on what we just heard from Miss Marino, but her and her kids, were they very close?
Very close. Very close.
Was she upset about having to leave Noah behind in Tennessee?
Oh, she was all to pieces. It was Mother's Day weekend, and she was so upset about not being with Noah on Mother's Day weekend.
And that kind of brings us to the point I want to talk to you a little bit about. Did you and your husband Steve have an opportunity to visit with Melissa for Mother's Day weekend?
Yeah, I was feeling really guilty because, this was her first Mother's Day in North Carolina, and our niece was graduating from Appalachian, and, I thought, this is her only time that she'll be graduating. There'll be many more opportunities, that now Melissa's back in North Carolina, to be with her on Mother's Day, and I knew that we could come back through Raleigh on our way home and be with her on Monday. So we went to Boone to the graduation, and we came back through and stopped at Melissa's on that Monday evening.
Just kind of a time reference for us. Mother's Day is always on a Sunday, so was it Sunday, May 12th, in which the graduation that you went to?
Yes, the graduation was on Sunday, May 12th.
And then y'all came back through Raleigh on Monday.
On Monday. And we timed it so that Melissa was getting off work about the same time we got in Raleigh.
So Monday, May 13th, about what time did you first see, or what time did you see Melissa that day?
It would have been around 5 or 5:30.
And did she already have Hannah when
She
you
did.
arrived?
She did. We went directly to her apartment. And yeah, we rode together. We went to the Cheesecake Factory at North Hills and had dinner together. And then we came back to her apartment, and Melissa wanted us to help her hang some pictures in the house, and we did. And Hannah wanted me to give her a bath, and I did. And she told me that they were going to go for a walk, which, I didn't feel real comfortable about, but she did, and she was excited. She had a great place to go walking there. I guess you call it the Greenway. And so I didn't try to tell her what to do. You don't tell your daughter what to do. But anyway, I'm assuming that she went for the walk, and, we said goodbye.
What was what kind of spirit was in Melissa in when you went there to the Cheesecake Factory there that night and back to her apartment?
Happy, excited to be there. She was a very organized person, and she was a little bit upset that she hadn't been able to fully get her apartment organized and settled, you know. She was a little stressing because I think the following day they were supposed to have the grand opening at the bank, and so she had a lot going on, you know, trying to get settled in, trying to get everything changed into her name, you know all the things you have to do when you're moving. And so she was a little stressed, but just excited to be there.
You said that Melissa and Bud had split up at this point, and obviously divorce and separation's never an easy thing for anyone, but did she seem to be relieved and happy to be here in Raleigh and kind of was moving on from that?
She did. She was glad to have a new beginning and a new start, and the kids seemed well adjusted with it, and she was looking forward to being close to home, to her family.
How far away were you living from Melissa at this time? You said you were in Wilmington.
It's about 2 hours,
And Kenneth and Barbara, about how far?
about the same distance.
You mentioned her work there at the bank. Did she seem to be enjoying that?
She loved it. She loved it, and she like I said, she just loved people. And even when we went to the bank after she passed, you know, she only worked there about 5 days, and the people just told us how much and how quickly they had just fallen in love with her, that she was just such a sweet and genuine person, and they just overflowing with personality, and they just loved her.
You said you and the rest of her family were about 2 hours away. Do you know if she knew any other people here in the Raleigh area, had any friends, other relatives?
She did, and she was looking forward to reconnecting, and she had reconnected with some of them because whenever I came with her here looking at the apartments, and we'd gone out to dinner, and we had run into some of her friends that she'd actually gone to high school with that had gone to school at State or Meredith or some of the other colleges up here and ended up living here in Raleigh in the area. So she had made contact with a bunch of them.
Ms. Wallace, did she have any enemies here in Raleigh that you knew of? Anybody that would want to hurt her or been harassing her in any way?
I don't know that Melissa had any enemies, so no.
You mentioned State. Was she a big State fan or just?
Yeah, we went to, when we were here looking at the apartments, she wanted to go over onto the campus, and we both had on high heels and walking all over the campus trying to find the bookstore so we could buy the kids some NC State T-shirts to take back to them. Yeah.
Going back to the evening in question, what time was it when you got back to the to her apartment from the Cheesecake Factory, roughly?
It would have probably been around 8 or probably around 8.
How long did you and Steve stay there after you got done with the dinner?
I think we left her somewhere between 9 and 9:30.
And you mentioned earlier that this was kind of a new apartment. She's still getting things together. Were there any issues that she was having with the apartment?
Yes, she had made multiple calls about the air conditioning not working. They kept telling her that it was fixed, and then she'd go back and it still wasn't fixed, and it became that it was over the weekend and she had to be without the AC for the whole weekend. You know, at nights it was, you know, on the cool side, but during the day it got hot, and it got hot in the apartment. So that night she had the windows and the door all wide open.
So with her AC down, that's kind of how she was trying to deal with those kind of early summer nights.
Yes.
Or late spring, early summer nights. You mentioned that she said she was going to go for a walk. Is that something she normally did in the evening hours, as far as you know?
She would even do that in Tennessee. Yes, she liked to walk. And we would go walking whenever we went to visit her. We'd always go for walks.
You said you and Steve left about 9:30 p.m., 9:30 p.m., somewhere in that area. Again, she was happy.
Yes,
How was Hannah doing at that point?
great.
I want to move you to the next day. That Tuesday, May 14th. What happened that morning that made you aware of what had happened?
I got a phone call as I was getting in my car to go to work. I didn't understand at the time, and in fact, I didn't even realize who it was, that he told me that he was, I believe he told me he was at Melissa's apartment and that something was horribly wrong and that I needed to come there. And I just, it's like I heard it, but I didn't hear it. And I didn't understand. And I went inside. And I told my husband, that I'd gotten a phone call that something was wrong with Melissa. And he said, well, is she okay? I said, I don't know. He said, well, who called? I said, I don't know. So I just hit redial on my phone and I called the person back. And I asked him if she was okay. He said no. I didn't really know who the person was. I never knew until the man was up on the witness stand that he had called me.
A construction worker, Mr.
Yeah.
Kidd.
Yeah, I didn't know.
So he's the one that let you know that Melissa was dead.
Mhm.
What was your concern at that point?
I was afraid that maybe she had had an aneurysm or something like that. I didn't know.
Did you know where Hannah was at this point?
No.
What did you and Steve decide to do at this point?
We were in the car within 10 or 15 minutes, headed to Raleigh.
Where did you go?
We went to the police station. They had us go to the police station.
So you didn't go. You didn't even go to the apartments that morning. Where was Hannah when you?
At the police station.
How was she?
Happy. She, it was like she didn't know what was going on. She's just a happy little girl and got a lot of her mama's personality. And just, you could clearly tell that she didn't know what was going on with her mama.
Hannah was eight at this time.
She was 8.
Did Bud and Noah make it to Raleigh as well?
They did. I think most everybody left the police department, headed back to Elizabethtown. And Steve and I stayed and waited for Bud and Hannah to get there. And then we left shortly after they got there to go home.
Melissa was 30 years old. She had a cell phone. Was she?
Always on it. Always. Texting, on Facebook. Actually, she had shut down her Facebook page shortly before she died.
Why did she do that?
I think it had something to do with Bud, because of the divorce and all. And she just didn't want all the interaction with that.
You recall what kind of phone it was that she had?
She had an iPhone 5.
May I approach the witness, Ronald?
Yes, sir.
Don, I'm approaching you with what has been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit We'll start with State's Exhibit 11. Can you identify that photograph for us?
It's the picture that First Tennessee Bank had made of her. They were putting it up on a bulletin in the city of Cleveland, advertising First Tennessee Bank.
So that's one of her work photos.
Mhm.
And then, I'm sorry, I got us out of order. State's Exhibit 10, can you identify that for us?
That's Melissa with Noah and Hannah. They had made a trip to Charlotte to visit her stepsister, and that David worked at the fire department, and he took them to the fire department.
So this photograph, it looks like it's made in front of a fire engine.
Mm-hmm.
State's Exhibit 10, in relation to May 14th of 2013, when generally was this photograph taken?
I believe it was in October of 2012.
And then her work photo, State's Exhibit 11, do you know about when that photograph was taken?
It would have been probably in 2000, early part of 2012, probably, or, yeah, that'd be my best guess.
And is this, these two photographs, does that represent how Melissa looked in May of 2013?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibits 10 and 11 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? They are allowed for illustrative purposes.
Permission to publish those items to the members of the jury.
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 10, is that the photograph you talked about with Melissa with her children?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell the members of the jury just who, which one Hannah is and which one Noah is?
It's Hannah and Melissa and Noah.
You think that was taken in late 2012?
Yeah, in the fall of 2012.
And then State's Exhibit number 11, is that the work photograph that you talked about?
Yes.
Dawn, you mentioned that Melissa was on her phone, like a lot of 30-year-olds are all the time. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 12, and then I'm going to remove the contents of State's Exhibit 12 and mark that as State's Exhibit 12A. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 12A?
Yes.
All right, what does State's Exhibit 12A appear to be, ma'am?
Melissa's phone.
And that you described it earlier as an iPhone. Does this appear to be an iPhone as well?
Yes, it is.
And it's white.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that Melissa had a white iPhone?
Yes.
And do you have a phone similar to
I
that?
have one just like it.
Now, State's Exhibit 12A, the glass or the front of that phone appears to be shattered. When you were with Melissa at Cheesecake Factory and then again at the apartment, was that glass shattered on her phone at that time?
No.
Okay, so it appears to be a phone, but it's in a different condition than when you last saw it.
Yeah, we had been communicating. Clearly, you can't communicate with that phone, but we had been communicating up till we were probably halfway, at least, back to Wilmington.
What time was the last time that you heard from Melissa via text or phone call that night?
Like I said, I think it was probably on our way back to Wilmington that evening.
Do you know if it was prior to midnight or after midnight? After midnight?
Oh, it would have been before midnight.
So somewhere you left around 9:30, and then do you recall about what time you got back to Wilmington?
It would have been around 11 or 11:30.
So you heard from her sometime during that trip?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Leaving a door open because of her air conditioning, excuse it, being hot. Are you referring to kind of the front door of the apartment or the sliding door to the balcony?
There was a sliding door to the balcony that she had open while we were there, and the windows in the bedrooms were open.
So when you left, that sliding glass door wasn't locked?
No.
Thank you, Dawn.
Cross-examination.
Ma'am, I'm terribly sorry this happened to your daughter. And then,
All right, very well. Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Further evidence?
State calls Captain Way.
Would you place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, sir. Please be seated.
Ms. Shakita?
Please state your name, sir.
Robert Lee Way.
And how are you employed, Mr. Way?
I am the public safety captain at Kane Realty Corporation.
Can you tell us? Sorry.
Robert Lee Way, W-A-Y. Public safety captain, Kane Realty Corporation. Kane, K-A-N-E, Realty Corporation.
And first of all, can you tell us what Kane Realty Corporation is?
Yes, ma'am. They are a mixed-use real estate developer in the northern part of Raleigh.
And what are some of your duties and responsibilities as a captain of public security?
I oversee the security and safety operations of the security department for Kane Realty Corporation, which includes the North Hill shopping and area and the apartments that we own there.
How long have you been employed with Kane Realty?
Part-time and full-time, 11 years.
And have you always sort of focused your area in the North Hills area, or do they have properties in other locations?
We primarily are focused in the North Hills area. However, we do hold a contract security license and work for various apartment communities or other locations around the area.
Specifically with respect to the North Hills area that we've been talking about for a lot this morning in the Allister apartment complex, are you familiar with that?
Yes, ma'am.
How long had you been working with Kane in that particular area, in the North Hills area? Was that your entire 11 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And as with respect specifically to that apartment complex, did you have any duties or responsibilities?
While the apartment complex was under construction, there were some recent thefts of copper wiring and things of that nature. So we were contracted by the construction company to make various patrols throughout the night to see if we found any thefts in progress or any breaches of the fence line.
We heard earlier from some construction workers and a supervisor that were talking sort of about the state of the construction there on May 14th of 2013. At that point, how many units were available for rent, or how many buildings, excuse me, were available for rent, if you know?
There was one.
And was there a leasing office, or can you tell us a little bit about, for example, if I wanted to go rent an apartment, where I would go?
At the time, the leasing office was located on the bottom floor of the only building that was open on property.
And you said that you would make patrols in the nighttime area. Would you go over there during the day as well, or what would some of your duties be during the day?
No, ma'am. We weren't over there during the daytime due to the ongoing construction activity, so there was plenty of people on site at the time.
Okay. And with respect to daytime activities, would you focus then more on the North Hill shopping area?
That's correct. We would.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Captain Way, I'm going to show you an exhibit that's already been marked or introduced into evidence, a state's exhibit number 5, a sort of an aerial photograph taken, or at least tried to portray the area there in May of 2013. Does that fairly and accurately represent sort of the area that you were patrolling in terms of the Allister apartment?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And using State's Exhibit 5, if you can stay there, if the jury can see, can you show us just generally what areas you were looking at?
After we would leave North Hills, we'd either come in Ramblewood from this direction or off Six Forks Road and approach Ramblewood Drive.
And so let me stop you for a second. Ramblewood is this street that's sort of to the left other than the belt line?
Yes, ma'am. It connects between Six Forks Road and Laster Mill Road.
And so if you go off the map sort of to the bottom here, it will go to Laster Mill?
That's correct.
Okay. And so you said you were coming from this area or up at the top?
Yes, we would enter and we would patrol. We would drive the property. This here is a construction office trailer. So there would be a fence across this entranceway right here that would block that entranceway off. And as you proceeded around, the only entrance open was the one right here, between the only open building on the property.
And earlier that was, I think we were referencing the pool, and it's the building closest to the pool area.
It's the building closest to the pool, yes, ma'am.
And there was some conversation from the construction folks about a fence. Was the area under construction fenced off?
This building was open.
Okay.
Everything here was open as far as driving was. There was a fence. There's a concrete pad right here, which was the mailbox area.
Okay.
So there was a construction fence that ran across to the mailboxes and then continued up from the mailboxes here, cut across the driveway on both ends right here. So you couldn't go to the back part of the construction area here.
And how often would either you or do you have staff that works with you as well?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
How many different officers or agents work with Kane Realty in the security arena?
Currently, I believe we have about 27 staff members.
And how often in a given evening or after the construction stop would you or one of the other members make a patrol through there?
We would make periodic patrols from the time construction ended until the morning when they started back up. And there would be anywhere between a 30-minute to 35-minute patrol of the construction area, but the times varied.
Okay.
It was not a set pattern.
So it wasn't at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And when, if at all, did you become aware of the incident involving Miss Huggins-Jones on the 14th?
It was that morning.
Were you working on that morning?
I was not. I was called into work.
And at some point, did members of the Raleigh Police Department try and get information to see, or talk to you if you had any information about your patrols through that area the preceding day?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall about what time it was that you would have gone through that particular area, the construction area, say the 13th of May?
Yes, that evening I was there between 9:30 till about 10 o'clock.
Would a patrol take about 30 minutes or did it vary?
It varies.
And 9:30 to 10 or so that evening, did you notice anything out of the ordinary?
No, ma'am.
Do you know about how many tenants were in that one building at that time, living there, that is?
I do not know off the top of my head. I know there was at least maybe 4 or 5 vehicles in the parking lot area.
And are you familiar with the apartment that Miss Huggins-Jones was renting?
I am.
During the patrol that you made on the 13th between 9:30 and 10 o'clock at night, did you make any observations or notice anything about her apartment?
Yes, the lights were on where the balcony area was and the blinds to the residents were open.
And so that would be up until about 10 o'clock when you left or so?
That's correct, because the driveway exits out right beside where her apartment was at.
Did you yourself go through that area later, or do you recall how late you were working that night?
Till 11 p.m.
So between 10 and when you left at 11 from work, did you go back to that area?
No, ma'am.
But to your knowledge and sort of in your protocol, would there have been other folks that went through that area?
Yes, our third shift officer comes on duty and works from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And do you recall who that third shift officer was on that night?
I believe that night was Officer Theodore Miller.
Prior to this time, did you, that is Kane, I'm gonna call you Kane Security, I know you're a part of Global
Yes, ma'am.
Kane Realty, but the security folks, did you have much interaction with, say, the Raleigh Police Department about things that were going on in that area?
We did not.
Since this time, has that relationship improved?
It has.
And so, for example, when you're patrolling that area for thefts and things of that nature, if you had seen something out of the ordinary, would you have taken care of it yourself, contacted law enforcement? How would that work?
We would usually try to take care of anything in our respect to that we could take care of ourselves. And if it involved law enforcement experience, we would call 911 and have an officer respond.
And I may have asked this sort of in a roundabout way, but at some point after being called in that next morning, did you speak with members of the Raleigh Police Department about the patrols that you had had that evening?
I did.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination?
No questions.
All right, sir, you may step down. Thank you very much. See, released from subpoena. Sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and break for lunch recess until 2:30. Please recall all the rules and instructions. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about the case. Don't form or express opinions about the outcome. No media or independent investigation in these matters, and no conversations with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. If you leave your notepads in your chairs, and at 2:30 we'll ask that you gather in the deliberation room. We'll bring you out as a group once we are all seated. Everyone else, please remain seated while the jurors excuse themselves. Outside the presence of the jury, are there matters that we need to take up before we recess?
No, I'm happy to say.
All right, we'll be in recess until 2:30.
This court stands in recess till 2:30.